Welcome to American National Women Speak. My name is Deacon Mary Hurley. The American National Catholic Church is an independent jurisdiction that embraces Catholic tradition while maintaining an inclusive approach. We provide a welcoming environment for individuals who seek a faith community that honors the teaching of the Catholic Church, but with a focus on social justice, diversity, and equality. The ANCC emphasizes inclusivity in ministry, offering full participation to women and LGBTQ+ individuals, and is committed to serving the spiritual needs of its members. And now, today's reflection.
Hello. Today we're going to be focusing on Luke's Gospel, which focuses upon Jesus' transfiguration. Before we get started, let's define the term transfiguration. Transfiguration is a complete change of form or appearance into a more spiritual state. So we have the gospel, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but when I started pondering and praying about this reading today, I said, well, what examples in my life might be something to help me understand what transfiguration could look like or be? And immediately, I thought of the 1974 film, The Great Gatsby, directed by Jack Clayton, and it starred Mia Farrow and Robert Redford. And Jay Gatsby was madly in love with Daisy Buchanan for years. They're separated. The war separates them. He comes back. He makes buckets of money. He wants desperately to be married to Daisy. So there's an arranged meeting between Daisy and Jay. And what our director does, he pans from Jay Gatsby over to Daisy. And when he gets to Daisy is illuminated. Daisy is softened but beautiful, almost ethereal. And I thought to myself, that's a great example of an almost transfiguration. But though, that's Hollywood. And I thought to myself, okay, keep thinking. What else in your life, Suzanne, came close to what a transfiguration might be? And in recalling different parts of my high school career, I thought of a friend who I met in sophomore year. And she had been a transfer student from New York City and up to the burbs. And we became friends. And as we became closer friends, she shared, call her Maria. Maria shared that she was in the foster care service. And she had been removed from her parents because her situation with her birth parents was really very, very, very poor. So she was placed with this amazing couple who I knew, and they lovingly accepted her and brought her in. And slowly but surely, she began to trust. And Maria began to want what they had in terms of loving family, unconditional love, forgiveness, all the things that she had never really experienced, and she had never been exposed to a faith. So Maria began going to church with her foster parents, and then the next step was she decided to do a retreat weekend, one that I had been involved in, and she made that retreat weekend, and she desperately wanted that faith. So she desperately wanted to go in search of that faith. So she began to study, and she studied to become a Catholic. And over the course of 2 years, she had everything she needed, and she was initiated into the church on the Easter Vigil. And I can't explain it other than at the end of the Mass, and I went up to her, and I was really taken aback because she was actually glowing, like her whole face was lit up. I took a step back. She was dazzling. There was so much light and love coming from within her. I said, that's the sign. That's something that's so close. Not exactly, of course, but very close to what God's power and God's love can do. And I saw that in Maria. And I thought, gee, that is something that still can happen today. So this transfiguration, we hear this in the gospel, and we'll get into that in a second, but these things can still happen today, that this transfiguration, this changing and becoming and taking on this new spiritual form happened. And I saw that in my friend. So if we look at the gospel, and we see that it's about a week past the time that Jesus' disciples have found out that he will be crucified. So they know that this is going to happen. And Jesus decides to take his disciples, Peter, John, and James, up to a mountain to pray. So as they go up, they pray, and the disciples get a little tired, and then all of a sudden, in the silence of prayer, in front of them, they see Jesus completely transfigured. He is dazzling white, and it wakes up the disciples because it's something they've never seen. And Jesus is conversing with Moses and Elijah. They're not transfigured, but Jesus is. And so you've got Moses, who would represent the law. He got those 10 commandments handed down to him from God. And then you have Elijah, who was the prophet, who prepared for the Messiah coming. So here is the Messiah, all transfigured. And the disciples are mesmerized by this. And they quickly want to set up some tents, and a cloud comes. And then in the cloud, they hear, this is my chosen son, listen to him. So we've heard that before. When Jesus was baptized, it was, here is my beloved son, in whom I take great joy and pleasure, right? In whom I am most proud. And then now, that was the baptism, and now this is the transfiguration. And it was as if the 3 disciples were being given a message from God. Listen. And how do we best listen? It's really in silence. So that ties us back to, they went up to the mountain to pray. And in praying in silence, in the silence of their hearts, in the silence of Jesus' heart, in the silence of the disciples' heart, you can really have that deep spiritual and prayerful connection. So they take that to heart. But having witnessed Jesus transfigured was actually like a gift to the disciples, because it was showing those disciples the deity of Christ, that he was the Son of God. And this is what he will be like as when he is glorified. Now, they don't understand any of that yet, because they don't know that he's going to rise from the dead. They've heard, I will rise again on the 3rd day, but they don't know. And so here they are, mesmerized by this, and it makes an indelible impact upon them, because they will remember, although it says at the end of our gospel reading that they don't speak about it. But the thing that is essential for us to remember is that it made its mark. So that in John's gospel, John said, we have seen his glory, the glory of the one and only. He's referring back to the transfiguration. So they have seen it with their own eyes. So the end of the gospel, after they go through everything, and they're a community. Now, Jesus didn't go and pray alone this time. He brought those 3 disciples. And I think that that's to give us the message today that community matters. For us being together to pray, to join together is really essential and important. So the importance of community is there. And after the whole experience, and they hear God say, listen to him, they become silent again. So in the silence of their hearts, they can start to process this. So in this Lenten journey that we're all experiencing, it's prayer, it's fasting, it's almsgiving. How do we prepare for, the Easter Triduum? How do we get ready? Well, one of the best ways in prayer is to find that silent place within you. I'd like to read you an excerpt from Daily Meditations by Richard Rohr, and it's titled, "Silence is Almost Too Simple." The simplest spiritual discipline is some degree of solitude and silence. To be with our own thoughts and feelings is probably the most courageous act most of us will ever do. Besides that, we invariably feel bored with ourselves, and all of our loneliness comes to the surface. We won't have the courage to go into that terrifying place without love to protect us and lead us, without the light and love of God overriding our own self-doubt. Such silence is the most spacious and empowering technique in the world. Yet it's not a technique at all. It's precisely the refusal of all technique. So I encourage you this week, maybe go home and read over Luke's gospel again. Find that silence. Don't be afraid, because in that silence is the great love of God. And that's the love that will touch your heart. Blessings always. Thank you.